Hi, I'm David Marchant, the founder of Offshore Alert, which investigates participants in high-value cross-border finance with an emphasis on high confidentiality jurisdictions. Our specialty is exposing investment fraud while it's in progress. Enjoy our content.
Hi everyone, I'm Bob Duffield, Executive Chairman of GreyList Trace Limited. And we're very excited to be gold sponsors of this ambitious Offshore Alert V Global Conference. Hopefully at some point next year, we will be able to meet up again in person. I'm joined today by our CEO, Nigel Nicholson, MD, John Fleming, and EVP, Craig Heschuk, who is our key man in North America and the Caribbean. We're going to share with you some war stories about the GreyList algorithm from the front line of non-disclosure, evasion, fraud, and general bad behavior. We've come a long way since our unofficial launch at C5's ATR conference in March 2019. And for those of you who don't yet know about our technology, the GreyList algorithm can legally track down hidden accounts in the global banking system. Our clients supply us with email addresses of a POI, suspect, or defendant. We turn these into digital code containing no personal information and test the spam filters of every bank in our global database for prior contact. A positive connection is where a bank has whitelisted the target's email address, which means there's a 98% probability that the target email address was used to open an account there. So in just over a month, GreyList reduces the set of 220,000 possible banks and branches where money has been hidden to a handful of highly probable locations. We all know that asset tracing is time-consuming and expensive. The GreyList algorithm removes much of the heavy lifting by pulling focus on precisely where the money has been hidden. Legal teams can use our reports to apply through the courts for disclosure and freezing orders. We've been very busy carrying out assignments for law firms, investigators, forensic accountants all over the world. And indeed, even during lockdown, we were operating in cyberspace, not virus space, and our business has continued to grow. Experts agree that GreyList is legal. We do not breach computer misuse, data protection, or banking secrecy laws, and we are GDPR compliant. So, GreyList is a cost-effective early intervention for any asset tracing investigation. As the word spreads, we are being approached by asset recovery teams all over the world, especially litigators and divorce lawyers. And I'm pleased to report that we are in high-level discussion with a couple of UK government agencies keen to trial GreyList technology in their hunt for criminal assets. Technically, the GreyList mission is not dissimilar to conquering Everest. Just 18 months on, we find ourselves at base camp, which is good progress for an unknown tech startup company. We have a way to go, but the summit is definitely within reach, especially with the help of our two key advisors, John Moscow, famed New York City prosecutor and all-round eminence Greaves of Lewis, Bach, Kaufman and Middleton, and Simon Bushell, founding partner of Celador Legal and a specialist in cross-border disputes. Simon co-authored the definitive text on Norwich pharmaceutical orders. We thought the best way to give you a sense of GreyList's scope and reach would be to run through a few case histories, suitably anonymized, of course. So let me hand you over to Craig for case history number one. Craig.
Thank you, Bob. I'm going to talk about evidentiary considerations based on technology investigations. I spoke recently at the ICC FraudNet conference on this topic, and so some of you will recognize the content. In fact, I co-authored a paper on this subject with Alex Clark of LDM Global and John Moscow of Lewis, Bach, Kaufman, Middlemas for the ICC FraudNet annual report. And I hope you may be interested in reading more in that publication. I think the subject of evidence arising from technology-based investigations and the importance of maintaining the integrity thereof is important and very current. Here's the point I want to get across with the case studies I'm going to touch on. When gathering digital evidence, it is vital to ensure that your investigator or digital forensics consultant keeps and maintains a clear, defensible record of the provenance of the data. The technology battle with fraudsters is always going to be an asymmetrical one. Fraudsters are by their nature lawbreakers, and so they will tend to seize the opportunity to use technology to perpetrate their frauds and also to cover their tracks. So the onus is on the fraud investigator to likewise power up their investigations and embrace technology. The good guys need to be adept at using cyber capabilities to shift the struggle in our favor. The use of artificial intelligence tools, AI, has the potential to be transformational. Using sophisticated algorithms, it is now possible in large and very complex investigations to achieve far better outcomes in terms of speed, cost, and accuracy. AI permits the global investigation of vast repositories of data to cut through much of the complexity and unpredictability associated with deciphering a sophisticated criminal network of special purpose corporations and bank accounts. But being on the side of the angels comes with some challenges. Legal and ethical standards necessitate a disciplined approach to compliance with applicable computer misuse and data privacy laws. The asset recovery investigator is faced with the compelling necessity to ensure that the results of an investigation are defensible and can be used where it matters in enforcing legal rights against criminals. So at the end of the day, the work product of an investigation will often be scrutinized in a litigation process and in front of the courts. Having the technology to find the relevant evidence is one thing. Ensuring that the evidence is admissible requires some additional diligence. If you use a reputable digital investigations firm that can ensure strict record keeping, then you can satisfy 1, the provenance of the information, 2, the chain of custody of that information, and 3, that the information has not been extracted in contravention of applicable data privacy laws. Digital forensics and e-discovery firms have to be able to justify the sources, but also the chain of custody of the data to ensure it is not compromised, corrupted, or altered. In the case of GreyList, the task and the risk to the client is greatly minimized because there is no extraction of data. Instead, a deduction is made from the spam filter's response. In each GreyList investigation, the evidentiary record is essentially the same as previous investigations, and the explanation to the court is essentially the same as well, the record of the spam filter's response. This means provenance and integrity of the results are remarkably straightforward. In recent cases, in the courts of California, a divorce matter, New York, a fraud matter, and the UK, a fraud matter that Bob is going to talk about shortly, GreyList has worked with counsel and barristers' chambers to prepare the investigation report and craft the subpoena or disclosure order application. For example, in the California divorce matter, a GreyList investigation identified 4 banking relationships in Tokyo and Hong Kong that the defendant's spouse had not declared. Nigel Nicholson worked with our advisor, John Moscow, as well as with counsel for the plaintiff, to prepare an affidavit. The application was to obtain letters rogatory for disclosure actions in Japan and Hong Kong. The affidavit contained a description of the GreyList technology and the manner in which our technology deduces information at the spam filter level. The application was successful and the letters rogatory were issued. So one of the interesting things here is that the source of the information on the banking relationships is coming from the same deductive process. and the explanation in each court filing is essentially the same. In each case, we can succinctly describe the manner in which our technology works, the straightforward provenance of the data, and most importantly, that we work by deduction of our results rather than extraction of any private data. So the power of GreyList is that the client reaps the benefit of a clean, clear, and above all, defensible record of the source of the information. And with that, I'm going to pass it over to my friend, John Fleming.
Thank you, Craig. I wanted to mention what actually happened in a real life case involving courtroom drama and the use of GreyList evidence. Earlier this year, we at GreyList were asked to investigate the email addresses of a businessman who was going into court in a Commonwealth country. We analysed 3 email addresses and found a number of banks associated with the individual. What was interesting in this case was that in the days leading up to the court date, when the different parties had to disclose all of their assets, the lawyer presented the list of banks received from GreyList Trace that the individual had not previously disclosed. Immediately, the individual then presented a signed affidavit declaring he did not have those accounts with any of the said banks. Simultaneously, the legal team had contacted the banks in question, stating that they had good reason to believe that our man held accounts with them. And then it got interesting. We got swift replies via email from one of the banks. I won't say the name of the bank, but I will say it is a global bank. And for these purposes, we will call it ABCD Bank. Both ABCD Bank in the UK and ABCD Australia in separate communications stated that this person did not have accounts with them. The lawyers went straight back to those banks, asking them for more details. Is this email address registered with your bank for any accounts held in your system, anywhere? ABCD UK in particular was very strong and clearly stating that the person in question had no account with them, and the emails mentioned were not in their system in any way or form for any of their accounts. Now, this did have us in a quandary for 48 hours or so, with the lawyers starting to question the integrity of GreyList's results. However, at the 11th hour, evidence from another source proved that the subject did indeed have the ABCD UK accounts in his personal name and had done for quite a number of years. So the moral of the story is that even the mainstay banks, the mainstream banks, cannot be relied on unless perhaps under a court order. Over to you, Bob.
Thank you very much, John. I'm going to talk about Project X. We decided to tell you about this case because it demonstrates the power of a GreyList output report. As we all know, the law is a jungle and outcomes of legal proceedings are often unpredictable. Indeed, I found this quote online. According to a paper from the American Judges Association, as many as 97% of civil cases that are filed are resolved other than by a trial. While some of these cases are dismissed or are resolved through other means, the vast majority of cases settle. And Project X is a case that illustrates this point. Settlement can be a great result. Nigel and I met a couple of English solicitors at a conference in Amsterdam. We exchanged cards at the bar and had a couple of drinks, as you do. A couple of weeks later, I received a call from one of them. They were entering the end game of an exhausting litigation. Their client had won a judgment to the value of £12 million, but the defendants were pleading poverty. The cupboard was notionally bare. The bank accounts that had been disclosed to the courts were effectively empty. But there were good reasons to believe that the defendants were being, shall we say, economical with truth. Unfortunately, suspicions, however well-founded, do not actually cover the missing millions. So this was last chance bar because the client was fast running out of cash and final court proceedings were imminent. So the lawyer who called me wanted to find out if we would cut them a deal. Instead of a global search, they wanted us to search just 13 countries, primarily known tax havens linked to the UK, like Channel Islands, Bermuda, Belize, Cyprus, Malta, Isle of Man, Gibraltar, and we threw in Switzerland for good measure. There were 3 defendants, and we were given a total of 19 email addresses, target email addresses to GreyList. We were confident enough about our technology to agree a part payment on the basis of a successful recovery of assets from banks uncovered by the GreyList algorithm. Things went well from the start. 13 countries is a small proportion of our global database of banks, and we obtained results in under 2 weeks. The results were explosive. We found a total of 15 banks in 8 countries, all previously undisclosed by the 3 defendants. It turned out that all 3 were linked to 4 identical banks, and pairs of the 3 subjects were each linked to another 2 banks. So in other words, the overlap between the 3 defendants and the 15 undisclosed banks, unmarked by GreyList, was in and of itself illuminating. Our report provided good evidence that the 3 defendants had conspired to hide assets from the court. We immediately prepared a detailed report for counsel because a court hearing was fast approaching. It was vital, of course, that counsel was brought up to speed with key facts: how the GreyList algorithm actually obtained its intelligence, how we actually deployed the algorithm, and our UK legal opinions, which had meticulously scrutinized the technology and had given us a clean bill of health. We were preparing to attend court as expert witnesses if called. After several iterations, a final version of our report was submitted to the other side. There was an instant reflex, a pushback from them, perhaps pulled by the shock of reading our findings. Then, out of the blue, we were told that they had settled. We can only assume that they did not want to come under the scrutiny of a judge. After all, our report was a list of banks that they had failed to disclose. Suddenly, they had nowhere to hide. The client immediately received more than 2/3 of their claims. And amazingly, we received our successfully in a matter of weeks. This must be some kind of record. The lesson of this case is, of course, is that a GreyList output report can have a powerful effect on a legal case. As you know by now, a GreyList report is simply a list of all the banks linked to a specific target email address. The failure to disclose banks to the court is a risky strategy at the best of times, but defendants are often motivated to make selective disclosures, believing they will never be found out. So GreyList technology is something of a wake-up call for these types of people, precisely because we obtain our intelligence within the law. Being confronted by a report that suddenly lists all your indiscretions is nothing if not a powerful motivation to settle. Okay, over to you, Nigel.
Thank you very much, Bob. So far you've heard about a number of cases where we've used our banking application, GreyList Gold and Silver, to establish relationships. I now want to give you an example of the use of our other main product, GreyList Connect. In the last quarter of 2019, we did 2 GreyList Gold assignments for a major global investigation firm. One was connected to the ex-president of a country and his family. The second connected to a number of prominent businessmen in an adjacent country. In both cases, we identified a double-figure number of banks, some in very surprising jurisdictions. In the second case, we also identified 7 additional email addresses related to the targets. We roll forward to the 6th of January, the first Monday of this year. I was sitting at my desk at 9 o'clock, wondering when GreyList's first deal of 2020 would arrive. I had my answer at precisely 9:37 when I got an email from the same client explaining that the two cases we've done were in fact connected, and now they wanted more. They categorized the politician in his family as Group A, the businessman as Group B, and then they gave us a Group C, three names we hadn't seen before, a group of financiers, but probably in this case, deal fixers. And from the surnames, there appeared to be an Englishman, a Scotsman, and an Irishman. And that's no joke. I'll tell you which one it was right at the end. Keep the suspense going. The client wanted us to test for two-way communication between the politicians, the businessmen, the politicians and the financiers, and the businessmen and the financiers, a total of 248 pairs of email addresses. It was quite a piece of work. 5 weeks later, we had our answer, and actually now we do it quicker. 26 pairs of positive two-way connections, 11% of the total. And what the results showed were two very, very important things. Firstly, the former president and the most prominent businessman had denied knowing each other, even in court. But we pinned 3 separate email addresses of the businessman against 2 of the ex-presidents, 6 positive connections, which made their communication regular and undeniable. Secondly, the client didn't know which of the financiers was the prime mover in whatever process had gone on between the other 2 groups. We found 9 positive two-way connections involving the financiers, 8 of them with one person. So he looked very much like the target to go after. And I think Bob and I fully understood the massive impact of this GreyList Connect assignment when we met 2 of the client's personnel in the bar in the last acid tracing conference we managed to attend in person before lockdown. It was in Dublin at the end of February. What we'd found had blown the case wide open. And the answer to the conundrum, it was the Irishman. So over to you, Craig.
Thanks very much, Nigel. I'm going to share my slides and close this off with a quick run through our GreyList deck. All right, well, GreyList provides unique, cutting-edge capability that is already making a material difference in many asset tracing investigations. As you know, we can assist clients by tracing email connections to every bank in the world. And we thereby reduce the investigation from 220,000 possible banks or branches to that handful of highly probable banks. It's worth touching on the time required for a GreyList investigation. They can run from 2 to 6 weeks, depending on geographic scope, but that time scale is reducing as our technology is honed. GreyList Gold is the name of our banking investigation service. GreyList Connect is our service for determining if any discrete pair of email addresses show evidence of communication, as Nigel just described. We haven't talked about GreyList Red in our presentation, but Red is our KYC and AML tool for financial institutions or for any client that may wish to interrogate a bespoke database, such as sanctioned entities, sanctioned banks. We're very proud to be a strategic partner of ICC FraudNet, and hello to all of the FraudNet members who may be watching. And I'll close off by sharing our contact information. You can reach out to any of us, and of course, you can always see us on our website at www.greylisttrace.com. There's more information there. And on behalf of the whole GreyList team, thank you for joining us for this presentation.
Thanks for watching. Consider subscribing to our investigative news and documents service and attending our events. For more information, visit offshorealert.com.